The creative force of the universe resides within you. To waste it is to squander your kingdom. There exists within every man a force so potent, so deeply tied to the essence of his being, that it has been revered, feared, and guarded across the ages. It is not just physical, it is spiritual. It is not just biological, it is divine. This force is the seed, the seminal essence, the life-giving currency through which man may create not only life, but legacy. The ancients knew what modern men have forgotten, that semen is more than a fluid. It is concentrated potential, compressed power, a divine offering from the body to the cosmos. When handled with reverence, it becomes the energy through which civilizations rise. When squandered, it becomes the slow poison that drains a man of his strength, his ambition, and his soul. Napoleon Hill, in his timeless work, Think and Grow Rich, spoke of sexual transmutation, the process by which the primal energy of lust could be redirected into higher pursuits. Hill observed that the world's most accomplished men, those who built empires, discovered sciences, conquered armies, were often the same men who had mastered their sexual drive, not by suppression, but by transformation. They learned to convert raw desire into disciplined ambition, to transform the base urge to spill into the higher calling to build. In Hill's words, the emotion of sex contains the secret of creative ability, but only when transmuted into a higher octave of purpose. This was not philosophy, it was strategy. And yet, long before Hill wrote those words, ancient civilizations had already enshrined the male seed as sacred. In Egypt, the god Atum was said to have created the world through an act of self-ejaculation, symbolizing the idea that from man's seed came divine creation itself. In Hindu philosophy, the retention of semen, known as brahmacharya, was seen as essential to spiritual growth. Yogis believed that semen, once retained, would ascend the spinal column as ojas, a refined spiritual energy that would awaken divine consciousness. In these traditions, the seed was not something to be wasted on whim or pleasure. It was offered, preserved, transmuted. To ejaculate frivolously was to spill divine fuel upon the ground. To retain and redirect it was to channel the gods. But in the modern world, this reverence has been replaced by recklessness. Men today are conditioned to see their seed not as sacred currency, but as an itch to be scratched, a tension to be released at the first sign of arousal. The result? A generation of men who are depleted, distracted, and disconnected from themselves, from their purpose, and from their power. And the consequences are not just physical, they are psychological. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, identified libido, the sexual drive, as the central motivating force behind human behavior. It was not merely about sex, he argued. Libido was the engine of ambition, of aggression, of creation. But when that drive is not governed, when it becomes compulsive or directionless, it leads not to mastery, but to self-sabotage. The man who cannot control his urge becomes a slave to it, pulled by impulse, drained by addiction, and ultimately destroyed by his own undisciplined hunger. Every ejaculation, when unconscious and unaligned with purpose, becomes an act of spiritual dissipation. The modern man, unaware of this, unknowingly leaks his power with every indulgence. He does not build, he bleeds. He does not climb, he collapses. And in this quiet collapse, something sacred is lost. The clarity, the confidence, the creative fire that once burned in the eyes of kings. And what is lost externally is mirrored within. Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist, spoke often of the anima, the feminine aspect within every man. When ignored, she seduces from the shadows, leading him toward fantasy, obsession, and addiction. But when integrated, she becomes the muse, the source of meaning, intuition, and artistic genius. Most men, however, chase the feminine outside because they have not made peace with her inside. They seek validation from women, from lust, from fleeting pleasures, never realizing that their addiction is not to sex, but to a lack of wholeness. And in this fractured state, they are easily manipulated, easily drained, and easily defeated. The man who learns to discipline his seed, however, becomes more than just sexually controlled. He becomes generative, not in the narrow sense of reproduction, but in the grander sense of creation. He creates businesses. He creates visions. He creates stability. He becomes the builder of kingdoms, not just in the world, but within his psyche. For him, the seed is not spent. It is stored. It is channeled. It is wielded as a weapon against distraction, against weakness, against the decay of potential. He sees the connection between his lust and his legacy, and he chooses wisely. To be careless with one's seed is to be careless with one's destiny. The king who gives his seed to every passing pleasure does not father a dynasty. He fathers chaos. He fathers conflict. He fathers nothing of substance, only echoes of what could have been. A true king knows that every drop of his essence carries a consequence, a creation, a cost. He does not spill it for cheap thrills. He sows it with intention, or he holds it in silence, letting it ferment into fire. So if you are to reclaim your kingdom, start here. Reclaim your seed. Reclaim your strength. Reclaim the sacred force that ancient kings once guarded, sages once preserved, and modern men so easily waste. For within your seed is not just life, it is legacy. Not just lust, it is law. And not just pleasure, it is power. The seed of kings is the soul of the empire, and the man who knows this becomes unstoppable. In the alchemy of lust, you'll be taken deep into the ancient and forgotten discipline of sexual transmutation, a principle once reserved for monks, warriors, kings, and creators. He who masters his lust commands the world. Every empire begins not with stone, not with steel, but with discipline. Before a man can build outwardly, he must conquer inwardly. And the greatest conquest is not over land, over others, or over fate, but over self. In the realm of masculinity, there exists a truth so often whispered yet rarely followed. The man who retains his seed retains his sovereignty. He is no longer a creature of impulse, tossed by the winds of temptation. He becomes a citadel, fortified, focused, and filled with fire. The seed, once seen as a simple biological function, becomes his source of dominion, the fuel for ambition, the currency of creation, the essence of his empire. To understand this, one must begin with the body, the temple of power. Within this temple, the seed is fire, and fire must be controlled or it will consume. In ancient Taoist teachings, semen was not something to be spent casually, but a life force to be cultivated. Practitioners believed that by preserving this essence, men could extend their vitality, sharpen their minds, and deepen their spiritual insight. The Taoists knew what modern men dismiss, that constant ejaculation weakens not only the body, but the will. The more a man gives in to the urge, the more he becomes ruled by it. He grows sluggish in mind, slow in ambition, and restless in spirit. His focus flickers, his fire fades. In contrast, the man who holds back, who stores that energy, who resists the animal and cultivates the ascendant, experiences a transformation. His voice deepens, his posture straightens, his eyes sharpen with intensity. People feel something different in his presence. This is not mysticism, it is biology sharpened by self-control. Semen is composed of vital nutrients, zinc, lecithin, amino acids, and enzymes. Retaining it over time floods the body with the very fuel that strengthens bones, supports the immune system, and enhances cognitive function. But even beyond the physiological, it is the psychological shift that defines this man. He begins to operate from a state of internal sufficiency, a power source independent of external validation. And it is from this state that creation begins. Napoleon Hill observed that sexual energy was the foundation of genius, that every great man, from artists to generals, learned to channel his libido into legacy. It wasn't that they lacked desire, it was that their desire had been disciplined. It was harnessed. They had learned that the seed is fuel, not a release valve. These were not accidents. These were strategies. These were tactics of kings. But what exactly is happening here? It is the ancient process of sublimation. Carl Jung defined sublimation as the redirection of primal energy into elevated forms: art, work, philosophy, mission. The man who practices retention is not suppressing his desire, he is transforming it. He doesn't flee from lust, he wields it as a sword. The tension becomes his fuel. The hunger becomes his drive. He no longer seeks pleasure, he seeks impact. And in this redirection, he becomes unstoppable. This is the secret most men will never understand. Retention is not about denial, it's about dominion. It's about choosing your higher self over your lower instincts. It's about commanding your kingdom, not just in the world, but in your nervous system. When a man teaches himself to sit in the fire of his own desire without collapsing, he becomes dangerous in the best way. Not impulsive, not reactive, but composed. Women notice, men notice. Life itself begins to bow in quiet respect. And this energy doesn't just stay in the body, it expands into your vision. You start to build things. You write the book. You launch the brand. You stay up late, not chasing women, but chasing purpose. You rise early, not with anxiety, but with hunger. Hunger to create, hunger to conquer, hunger to leave something behind. That is the seed working within you, not spilled on screens, not lost in strangers, but forged into fire. In today's world, men are taught to indulge every urge, to relieve stress through release, to seek dopamine over discipline. But what they don't realize is that every time they give in to lust without intention, they are giving away a piece of their will. The man who retains, however, builds a different identity, an identity forged in self-command. He is no longer a man chasing validation. He is a man channeling vision. And in a world of chaos, he becomes the calm eye of the storm, the architect of his destiny, not the addict of his desire. So understand this: your seed is not a burden, it is a blueprint. It carries within it not just life, but legacy. It is the essence of your future victories. It is the sacred currency through which you will build your empire. Guard it, refine it, channel it, for the man who commands his seed commands his kingdom. The true king does not give his seed to pleasure, he gives it to the future. A man's empire is not measured by his conquests, nor by the number of women he's touched, but by the endurance of what he leaves behind. A dynasty is not built in the bedroom, it is forged in restraint, vision, and divine self-governance. In the sacred economy of life, a man's seed is his signature on time. What he chooses to do with it echoes across generations or disappears into the void of indulgence. The world doesn't need more men chasing release. It needs more men planting kingdoms. The modern man is a consumer of lust, of porn, of fleeting validation. He has been taught that pleasure is the highest pursuit and that ejaculation is harmless, even healthy, as if his body were a machine with no sacred meaning. But within that casual mindset lies catastrophe. Each careless release becomes a surrender, a quiet forfeiting of potential, direction, and power. The man who habitually wastes his seed is not just draining his body, he is burying his legacy before it's ever born. Contrast this with the man who chooses to withhold, to channel, to redirect. He becomes more than man, he becomes mythic. His aura changes, his presence deepens. Why? Because the seed, once retained, doesn't disappear. It concentrates, it sharpens his focus, it fuels his words, it carves his ambition into stone. Women notice, men respect it, though they can't always explain why. There's a different voltage behind his gaze. There's a charge behind his silence. He's not empty. He is full, and that fullness calls things into orbit. This is what the ancients understood, that semen wasn't just reproductive fluid, it was life force. The Egyptians believed that pharaohs channeled divine power through sexual discipline. The Vedic seers of India claimed that retained semen rose up the spine as spiritual light, awakening higher faculties. Even in Christian mysticism, the call to chastity was never about repression. It was about preparation, preparing the man to carry something far greater than lust, legacy. In psychological terms, Friedrich Nietzsche called it the will to power, the internal flame that separates the higher man from the herd. The lower man chases pleasure, the higher man creates worlds. Nietzsche saw the average man as a creature ruled by impulse, whereas the Übermensch, the overman, transcended animal instinct and bent nature to his will. That process begins, fundamentally, with sexual discipline. It's not a denial of desire, it's a harnessing of it. The man who no longer needs sex becomes dangerous, not because he suppresses his instincts, but because he has mastered them. And mastery is magnetic. This is where the soul of legacy takes root, not in orgasm, but in order. A man who can command his sexual energy can command his destiny. He no longer lives in reaction, he lives in design. He sees that every drop of his essence could be used to shape a child, start a movement, build a fortune, or sculpt a new self. He does not waste it on meaningless encounters or mindless urges. Instead, he retains it like gold in a vault, using it to finance the empire of his future. Ask yourself, what are you truly building? A night of pleasure, or a name that will be whispered through time? Every ejaculation is a decision, to spend on the moment or to invest in the mission. The man ruled by lust leaves behind a trail of broken connections and wasted days. The man who holds his fire builds something eternal. Even biologically, the act of semen retention signals something to the world. The body begins to operate differently. Testosterone rises, the eyes sharpen, the skin glows with vitality. But deeper still, there is a spiritual signature, the sense that this man is not ordinary, that he is a gatekeeper to something higher, more disciplined, more divine. The woman feels it. The world senses it. Life bends around him because he is no longer a boy playing with fire. He has become the fire. This is the path of the king. This is the law of the builder. You must understand, your seed is not just about sex. It is about structure. It is not just flesh. It is fate. Each time you hold back, you rise. Each time you channel, you conquer. Each time you transmute, you leave behind the man of impulse and step into the man of legacy. So remember, kings do not spill their wealth. They plant it. They guard it. They multiply it. The empire you dream of is not out there. It is within you, waiting to be built with every drop you save, every urge you conquer, every vision you pursue. You are the architect. Your seed is the material, and your life is the kingdom waiting to be born. Guard it like gold. Release it like a weapon. Use it only to build, because the seed of kings is the soul of legacy. Thus remember, we are Indecepta. Becoming Indecepta is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war.